Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today and welcome to another EPI presentation. Today's webinar is going to be focused on the Certified Data Center Specialist, where we're going to do a technical deep dive on the course and what it has to offer. I'm joined by Ms. Paige Fong today, who's EPI's Global Head of Marketing, and Paige was responsible for setting everything up today, and also Mr. Andrei Lazarov, who's one of our senior auditors and trainers, and he'll actually be speaking to you today in depth about the CDCS. So before we jump into the presentations, just a little bit of housekeeping. We will be sharing recordings of the presentation and all the presentation materials after the webinar, so that'll be circulated next week. If you've got any questions, you'll also see at the bottom of the Zoom platform, there's an opportunity to ask questions in the Q&A section. The chat section tends to be quite active. Please feel free to use it, but the best place to ask the questions and is likely to lead to a response during this session is in the Q&A section of the platform. So I think with that, I'm just going to share my screen quickly and we'll kick off with the presentation. So just a quick agenda to run through the topics we'll be covering today. It'll be a quick intro on EPI. We're going to run through what the CDCS is. At that point, I'll hand over to Andrei, and Andrei will run you through, as I said, a deep dive on what the CDCS actually includes with regards to more technical aspects of the course itself. We'll then look at some career development aspects and how you can benefit from completing the CDCS, and also at the same time considering it for many of your own team members and potentially people who report into you. That will be concluded with a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. So a little bit about EPI for those who don't know about us. Look, EPI has been around for almost 4 decades now. We were originally started in the United Kingdom, but we relocated from Europe to Singapore just before the year 2000. So been in business a long time. We've got 12 offices globally, but also a large partner network in over 130 cities. So EPI is very active globally, and we're in all the major data center markets, either with a direct presence or an indirect presence through a very active partner network. Now, there's 2 core services that EPI tends to provide or focus on the most. The one is training, which we'll obviously be discussing in depth today, but the other is designs and audits. And this is quite important to understand that the auditing services we provide around particularly designs, construction and operations means that a lot of our trainers are at the front of what we see with regards to the data center industry as a whole. They're not only providing training to people who are in the industry, but they're also conducting a lot of audits and assessments of the facilities that are being designed, constructed, and operated, which means that EPI's trainers are incredibly well-rounded, which makes them subject matter experts with regards to the courses that we provide. EPI has won a lot of awards over the years, and I think this is testament to the quality of the services that we do provide and the length of time in the industry too. We also, provide our services to some of the biggest names in the world, and not just people in the industry like the Amazons and the AT&Ts of the world, but also the biggest banks, large blue chips. We would have provided both audit services and training services to some of the biggest companies globally. So very well known. The certifications we provide are highly recognized. And as a result, it's one of the reasons why our certifications and our training are internationally recognized like they are. So I think it's important to provide a bit more of a background on what the Certified Data Specialist course actually is. And the best way to do that is probably to start at the beginning. So many of you on the call may already be CDCPs. It is a prerequisite to take the CDCS course. But what the CDCP is a technical foundation. And what it does is it provides you with a basic foundation on best practice standards within the data center itself, but particularly related to design and build. And this is quite important to understand, because the big thing with particularly the data center industry is that as it becomes more advanced and as the technology that we're working with starts to diversify and change, a lot of that is placing pressure on teams as a whole, particularly from a design perspective. So when we look at the TA 942 scope as an example, and this is one of the standards that the CDCP looks at, along with other standards like the ISO, various ISO standards, BICSI and so forth, what you'll find is that data centers require a multidisciplinary approach. And with that, we're looking at people who tend to specialize within those various disciplines. So EPI's training tends to focus on all the core disciplines that are required to construct and design a data center. And what we do is we look at it holistically. And what the CDCP does is it ensures that everyone speaks the same language, which is quite important because you might be an electrical engineer, but it's important for you to understand what's required by way of safety, for example, or facilities monitoring. Likewise, you could be an architect. An architect isn't necessarily going to be a telecommunications expert, but it would be important for them to understand where they need to lay their particular two communication cables or where the appropriate pits may need to be dug, things like that. So what the CDCP does is it basically provides you with a solid foundation and understanding of the data center as an ecosystem and allows you then to apply that knowledge with regards to your own profession. What the CDCS does is it provides you with an expansion on that. So it uses that as a foundation. This is a more advanced 3-day course. And what it really does is it focuses on building on top of the CDCP. So what we do is we look at more in-depth, providing you with a more in-depth technical understanding of data center design. We actually start to delve into things like key engineering calculations. So it could be cooling calculations, fire suppression calculations, and so forth. The real benefit, though, in this particular course is multifold. It's not just about improving on the knowledge that you gain from the CDCP. It's about being able to apply that knowledge with regards to your particular specialization within your organization. So it doesn't matter if you're in an engineering role or your focus is predominantly engineering. Even people who have operational roles benefit immensely from this, because what it does is it turns you into a fantastic sparring partner when you're having to deal with vendors, when you have to put RFPs together, when you've got to review equipment selections and designs. Or overall, this will just simply make you a far more efficient and effective operator when it comes to having to deal with a complex supply chain, but also with your colleagues who are going to be specialized in areas you may not be. So with that, I think before I hand over to Andre, who'll actually be doing a deep dive on the CDCS for you, a little bit about him. Look, Andre has been with EPI for a few years now, and he's one of our senior auditors and trainers. And again, I think it's important to emphasize that Andre is also an auditor. So beyond being a trainer, Andre is often assessing a lot of the newer data centers that are being designed and constructed all over Asia. In fact, we send him to the Middle East and even Europe from time to time. So he would be seeing what a lot of the largest operators and hyperscalers are doing and what they're planning to do long term, which means that when he's running a class and he's, sitting on the other end of the table running you through our material, he's actually in a position to be able to help you with a lot of the challenging questions or situations you may be facing. And that's the case for most of EPI's trainers. They're multi-skilled. The thing with Andre is he has 25 years experience in the industry itself, and predominantly with banking and telecom, but also hyperscale and colo. So Andre comes with a wealth of experience in both hyperscale and the colocation market. And he's also had a lot of senior leadership experience too. So very strong track record. We're lucky to have him. And we've been looking forward to getting him on the presentation today so that he can actually run you through things in a bit more detail. So with that, I'll hand over to Andre.
Welcome to the Certified Data Center Specialist Sneak Peek. My name is Andre Lazaroff. As Dean very kindly mentioned, I have been with EPI for a few years. I am an auditor and I'm a trainer for EPI as well. With training, I always call it knowledge sharing. So I'll be walking and talking through about CDCS and what it covers and who it's for. Obviously, within our industry, we're grappling with power and energy constraints, cooling and thermal management issues, with rack densities, being scalable, and also capacity planning. Predicting future demand can get quite challenging. So this course is targeted for IT people, facilities, data center operators, any professional working in or around the data center world. As Dean mentioned, you must hold a CDCP certification to have a chance at leveling up with CDCS. It is a 3-day course. You'll notice down the bottom in the slide, R2501, that's the current course content. I'll walk through the syllabus with you as well, and it'll give you a good feeling for what is expected as the deliverables and how it fits into the real world of data centers design, build, and also operations. Look, I always talk about green lights on. At the end of the day, it's all about customer experience and the end user experience. So each module within this course has specific areas that we address. These topics are built up and aligned with the 942 standard. As Dean mentioned, it is a certifiable standard. So please, I encourage you to go across to our website and check it out. The agenda is a three-day course. So the agenda, let's go through the agenda for the 3-day course. On day 1, we'll be talking about the data center lifecycle, standards, rating level definition and requirements, building considerations, advanced floor and suspended ceilings, and then we finish the day off with advanced power. That's a very large module. Day 2, we talk about advanced electromagnetic fields, advanced cooling, and advanced fire suppression. Just a side note, advanced cooling has had a major update with this new course because of all of the new trends that all of us EPI auditors are witnessing within data centers. On day 3, that's the 3rd day, we'll be talking about designing and installing scalable network cabling systems, environmental specifications, and contamination control. And we finish the day with data center efficiencies, and then you're ready for your exam. The exam itself, it's a closed book exam. It's 60 questions. It's all multiple choice. You've got 90 minutes to complete that exam. I think the pass mark is 75% from memory, 45 out of 60. So effectively, you've got 90 seconds per question. That's a long time in our world. The course itself, it is accredited by Exian as well. So if you pass the exam, you will get an official certificate from Exian. Every headhunter and employer is looking for these types of certifications. So I very much encourage you to make the effort to complete the exam. So if we look at module 1, and we'll break down each module, and I'll just do a snippet of a few slides within each module to give you a good flavor of what to expect in CDCS. In module 1, we talk about the 4 stages of the data center lifecycle, some of the subcomponents of each stage, and the importance of planning, continuous improvement, and alignment to the business objectives. So the lifecycle, right? In the first module, we start talking about this. The discussion sets the scene. Life cycle of your data center, from planning all the way to retirement, decommissioning. So the entire life cycle. If you look at design for a moment, this is one of the most important phases. In this phase, you're going to determine the fundamental criteria for that data center, including the availability requirements, what rating levels you want to go for, what customer you want to attract, the size, the capabilities of your power, cooling, your network, your telecommunications. So we need to consider the business needs and what the business wants. So once the design is completed and before you start the implementation stage, very important, get an audit. An audit, a design validation, that we call that a DCDV. Reach out to Dean if you're interested in that. An audit should be completed to confirm conformity to the 942 standard before you implement. If you miss this stage, it may be too late and very costly to rectify. In the implementation phase, you would have already appointed your project manager, who should have the appropriate experience for the project. But in the implementation stage, this phase actually covers the physical build of the data center. And it gets to the point where we go through testing and commissioning, and there's 2 parts to this. We've got our individual equipment testing, and then we've got our IPVTs, which is our integrated product verification testing. You may know this as your level 5 commissioning. But as per the standards, we call it IET and IPVT. Included in that implementation stage is training and assessment. So all staff should be receiving training. It's typically provided by the equipment vendors on how to operate and maintain the equipment during normal operations and also during emergency operations as well. And all of that documentation and that formal sign-off is required before you hand over to the operations team. Very, very important. So we go through all of the steps in doing this. In that implementation, you'll see here another audit. So an audit should be completed to confirm conformity to the 942 standard. This is an on-site audit. This is a data center conformity certification, a DCCC. That's what we call that. And then going through this cycle, now we've handed over to operations. So you should be operating as per the data center operations standard, the DCOS. So once that building is completed, now we're operating and we are optimizing the data center. You want to maintain that investment. You need to monitor the performance of that investment. You need to also provide continual training to your operators. So they need to be able to adapt to the changing environment. Data centers are very dynamic, ladies and gentlemen. In the last phase of that life cycle, you may want to retire. I have gone through the process of decommissioning data centers, very large data centers. I've done that during my working career. It's very complex to be able to wrap up the show and cease operations. But just remember, the cost of that retirement of your facility should actually be part of your design phase. It's there to ensure your return on your investment is justified. This is part of your total cost of ownership, your TCO. You may know it as a TCO. This should be as simple as moving maybe from one cage to another. You might be driven by the end user, maybe decommissioning a system. You might need to make good and hand over the site back to the owners, being the landlords. There are so many possibilities in the world of retirement and decommissioning. Let's continue with module 2. Let's do a snapshot on module 2. We talk about the origins of the T-level definitions, the various rating level definitions, the categories which define rating levels, the various N redundancy options. That's a really interesting topic that we go through. We also talk about the requirements for concurrent maintainability, the substation requirements, the criteria for making a decision on which rating level to follow. That's a big one. And the various maintenance level options and why the rating levels need to be supported with proper maintenance and operational procedures. Module 2 has got a lot to deal with. So if we just concentrate on the 942 standard, hopefully you already know it is currently the only official accredited data center standard, and it can be applied to any country in any region. And we are currently at the C version, which was updated in May 2024. So we complete a deep dive into the history of the standard, on how it's evolved from the original concept back in 2005 to where we are today, being the C version. So everything we talk about within CDCS training will be referring back to this standard and other standards. Hence why it's really important to discuss clear differences between the 942 standard and other standards or guidelines. Which then gets us into the topic of comparisons of redundancy options. Now, there are so many different options out there. Long-standing solutions have always been an N or an N+1 or an N+N system design, which became quite a standard configuration once we had dual-corded power supplies being adopted. It's very straightforward design, which is easy to manage. There is a downside to this. You've got low utilization and you've got stranded capacity, which you can't use. So in CDCS training, we start talking about, in a lot of detail, about catcher systems, especially in redundant backup power system architecture. And that catches the load if the primary power path fails. So suppose you are running a 2-end UPS design, right? Each IT load has full redundant UPS parts. It's safe, but it's very costly. An N+1 with a catcher system means your N, your size for your N UPS system will carry the normal load and add one extra UPS, the catcher, connect that either via a bus tie or maybe a static transfer switch. If one UPS fails, the catcher picks up that stranded load. You just need your control systems to be very fast and reliable. We're talking milliseconds here. There are much more complex electrical designs and operational procedures, which we talk about in a lot of detail. So this slide here is rounding out the numbers and talking about theoretical 1 megawatt modules and how you would be distributing that stranded capacity. Very common, it's something that I'm seeing very common, is a 3 makes 2 system. In this setup, we've got 3 systems installed to provide the capacity of 2. 2, right? So if one system fails, then the load will seamlessly transfer to the remaining systems. So each system is only loaded to 2/3, or you might see there, 67% of its total capacity. So we go through a lot of detail in CDCS on how to plan for it and what to look for, especially in single line diagrams. And we'll get to that in advanced power, okay? In module 3, we start talking about the floor loading requirements, the requirements and standards for fire-rated walls, fire-rated classes, blast proofing, bulletproofing, and the various force entry options. I'm hoping that no one here has experienced a fire within their building. The last thing you want in a data center is a fire. There have been some recent fires within our industry. Famously, last month, September, South Korean government, they had a fire in one of their government facilities. Go back to X, their data center in Hillsborough. They had a very large fire with their UPS system exploding. Look at Singapore, very large co-location provider, had a large fire with their lithium batteries and the UPS system failures. So fires are very common. You don't hear about them, but they are very common. So in CDCS, we walk through all of the options and talk about the risks and then how to mitigate the loss of life and also your data center assets. In module 4, we go through the requirements for installing a proper raised floor, how to achieve seismic protection, best practices for seismic protection, and suspended ceiling board requirements. So we still talk about raised floors because 48% of new builds are still using raised floor systems. This would be part of your data center lifecycle under the implementation stage. So in CDCS, we do a very large deep dive into the installation and the correct practices in regards to these flooring systems. It's very important to understand the correct installation practices so you do not have issues in the future. Remember that once that floor is in place, it is very difficult to upgrade or rectify installation issues, which gets us to the starting point. So we need a starting point for that installation of the flooring system. Maybe something that's overlooked in your implementation stage. So we talk about this and we talk about it in a lot of detail. I've witnessed some installations where the start of the floor actually starts at the far end of the computer room. So by the time you get to the entrance door of the computer room, the floor level thresholds are well over 6 millimeters. And that's really bad. So we talk in detail about the installation process, how to set it up, and how to deploy the subfloor grid. So we have the correct levels from the beginning of the process. Remember, again, we've got a lot of systems which will be sitting on top of the raised floor system. So you've got to get it right. Advanced power, module 5. We talk about how to apply various basic power formulas, the function of the SLD and the various breaker and protection devices, the basic principles of breaker sizing in a SLD, and the various surge protection devices and how to use and install them. We also talk about the various power cable considerations, generator details, and calculate fuel requirements and select the right UPS system, various harmonic reduction methods, and calculate batteries and parallel battery banks. And we finish off with new energy storage technologies. Something that is so important, at the beginning of this module, we start talking about the single line diagram, the SLD. The electrical infrastructure layout in your data center as part of your design phase. It will depict in what's called a single line diagram. In Northern America, you might know it as a one line diagram, very common in the Americas. In Asia, the Middle East, and Europe, it's known as a SLD. So anything and everything which is attached or fixed to the electrical supply needs to be identified in that single line diagram. And we go through this in a lot of detail in CDCS. In a design validation, a DCDV, a design validation, we're looking for this detail. So CDCS helps you look for this detail. The first thing you're going to be checking is whether the layouts provide the redundancy as per your design. So in CDCS, we do a deep dive into reviewing these diagrams and what is attached to that electrical supply. We're looking for labels like TPN, which is your three-phase, SPN, your single-phase, breaker types, MCBs, MCCBs, isolators or switches, the settings, your form factors, and also surge protection. So we also need to concentrate on how power is being delivered all the way downstream to the rack level. So we go through that in a lot of detail. Something that's quite interesting is turbine generators. It used to be a buzzword. It is mainstream now. So it's also recognized in the C version of the standard. With turbines, the take-up started in the US and then in Japan. You may recall in Japan in 2011, yeah, Fukushima disaster. There was a big disaster in Japan, and that in turn created reliability concerns and fuel supply securities for that country. However, we are seeing these systems all over the globe now, especially with island grids, microgrids. We start talking about island grids and high industrial loads. They favor gas turbines. They tend to be more reliable because of fewer moving parts. You don't have to worry about too much. So we talk about the differences in these systems when you compare that to your traditional backup power systems. In CDCS, we do a deep dive into the benefits and the drawbacks of these systems. Something that you might want to consider in your design phase. Remember the life cycle of your data center. They are very compact. They don't take up as much space as a traditional generator. Reliable. Their start failures are reduced, and they can run on so many different types of fuel. You might see here HVO. If you haven't heard of that type of fuel before for gas turbines, that's waste vegetable oils or animal fats that's processed using hydrogen instead of methanol, like a biodiesel. So it cleans a lot better, and it's a very good replacement for fossil fuels. So we talk about these systems and how you can utilize these systems as part of your sustainability goals. In Module 6, we talk about EMF. This is electromagnetic fields. The two main standards of EMF. The main sources of EMF in the data center. Safe distances for transformers, single and three-phase power cables, and bus bars and trunking. We also talk about how to calculate attenuation factors for shielding. In CDCS, we get into much detail in relation to EMF. A quick refresher on the governing standards from the IEC and also the NCRP, and then we discuss the topic of avoidance of EMF within your design. Being mindful of incoming high voltage transformers, distribution boards, cabling, isolation transformers as well, and also UPS systems. The objective is always obviously to create distance between the source and the target, and we show you ways on doing that. So we talk about the methods to reduce the risk of EMF to your systems and also to humans which may be affected by EMF. In Module 7, a very large module, we start talking about cooling. So we talk about the difference between the various definitions in cooling, the standards and values of for temperature and humidity and how to measure them, very important. The different heat transfer methods, the recommended airflow patterns, and how to set up the floor plan and understand the various floor tiles and racks and their performance. We also talk about the various formulas important for cooling, understand the key considerations for air conditioning selection, understand the various energy efficiency improvements for cooling, such as free cooling, the requirements for air conditioning redundancy, the installation requirements, the set points and calibration requirements, the advantages of CFD and advanced cooling technologies. I picked this slide because it's the beginning of a very large update to this module. As computing demands grow, we're seeing a massive spike in heat densities and also higher delta T's from our ICT equipment manufacturers. Traditional air cooling simply doesn't cope anymore, and it's just not going to work in the future. Hence why in CDCS training, we spend time talking about all of the new technologies which are being used to address these challenges. We go into some detail regarding direct-to-chip cooling, immersion cooling, and how advanced technologies work, especially spray or jet cooling. Spray or jet cooling is where systems spray fine jets of liquid to directly remove heat from components. Quite specialized, but we go through that as well. When you look at liquid cooling, we spend considerable time discussing liquid cooling methods, which provide excellent energy efficiency when you compare that to air cooling alone. Liquid cooling has a higher thermal transfer capability when you compare it to air cooling, and liquid cooling will reduce your IT fan energy. It might save you up to 15% in your energy costs just from your ICT equipment. So it's something to consider. And it's always driven by adoptions. And the adoption is compute power. Compute demands, again, as I mentioned, they are skyrocketing. Workloads coming from AI, machine learning. You've also got your HPCs, your high performance compute. They're pushing these systems harder every day. This means higher power usage and increased thermal density. We're just cramming more load into smaller spaces, which then means traditional cooling methods are struggling to keep up. One main driver of adoption is that liquid cooling offers higher energy efficiency using lower water usage as well. That is a massive plus in regions where water is regulated. Governments are pushing companies to reduce greenhouse gases, reducing emissions. So better cooling methods can play a big role in cutting costs. In CDCS, we talk in detail about these adoptions, direct-to-chip, single or two-phase immersion cooling, and also spray and jet cooling. We get into the detail of manifolds, piping, infrastructure layouts, liquid distribution, and also maintenance of these systems. In Module 8, we talk about the basic elements which create fire, the various smoke sensing options to use and where to place sensors, the various water-based systems, and the various gas-based systems, and determine which one is best to use depending on various factors. We also talk about the required volume of gas in a gas-based fire suppression system, including taking into account risk factors, the requirements for discharge and retention times. And we also talk about the requirements for the installation and new alternatives for fire suppression, which is quite exciting. So in Module 3, we touched on building considerations, especially in relation to the risk of fire. So in Module 8, we expand that discussion and we talk about the possible options available within a data center when it comes to fire suppression. We talk about detection systems like HSSDs, which then leads us onto the topic of suppression systems. And within this module, we also complete a few exercises on how to calculate the amount of fire suppression agent required based on the type of gas and the room volume you have. We do some specific calculations using FM200 and also Novak, and also inert gases like IG541. So you will need to know these techniques when you're reviewing or you're discussing fire systems with your contractors or vendors. So CDCS will help in regards to these types of questions with your vendors. In Module 9, we talk about the TIA 942C cabling structure, cabling types recommended for data centers, top of rack and end of row designs, new products and alternatives, vendor design and installation information, installation best practices, standard for telecommunication labeling and administration. So I really like this illustration. We need to have a good grasp of the 942 requirements. So we help with that understanding of what the 942 standard requirements are based on your desired rating level. So this illustration uses color coding to help highlight the increasing requirements for redundant cabling components and also physical separations as you move up the 942 rating levels. You'll notice here, we show rated 1, single path, and how network is distributed, with a rated 2 adding on a diverse route for an access provider, being mindful that those pits need to be 20 meters apart, all right? So then in a rated 3, we start adding in a second or a redundant entrance room, which will also need its own redundant power, cooling, and also separation of fire services. And then a rated 4, we start talking about that second MDA, that additional MDA, and where that should be located. Personally, I always like to see that external from the computer room. So we talk about this in detail. We also look at grounding and bonding. So we talk in great detail about grounding requirements for your ICT infrastructure. In a data center, it's essential to have what's known as a clean ground. So that grounding standard that we're going to be talking about is the TIA 607. It's one thing that I continually notice in a lot of the on-site audits. A lot of operators and developers are missing the detail here on how to deploy the ICT infrastructure while complying to the 607 standard. So in CDCS, we talk about in detail about the standard, plus proper bonding across your entire infrastructure. So when you think about grounding, this includes everything: your equipment racks, your enclosures, cable trays. That's something that's always missed. Cable trays, patch panels, routers, switches, ladders, surge protectors, everything that you can think of. Anything metallic infrastructure, anything involved inside your data center must be connected to ground. So I'll show you how that works. In Module 10, we talk about environmental specifications. So we speak about the various noise considerations and effects, the various levels and types of data center contamination, how to prevent them, how to measure the level of contamination, how to clean it up, and electrostatic discharge origin and preventative measures. So in CDCP, we touch on these categories. However, in CDCS, we do a deep dive into these types of contamination. I've been known to be a bit of a clean freak, so I don't like dust personally. So in a data center, I don't want to see dust, but there's other contaminants that you're going to experience. Be mindful that in your data center, you are going to experience failures if you do not control your contamination. You're going to experience on how to apply necessary controls to reduce those risk failures. It also is about human safety, as we also talk about acoustic avoidance and controls. And we talk in detail about a few standards which we need to adhere to. There's an IEC standard, um, 6721. That's my memory, right? And then we've got the International Society of Automation, the ISA 71 standard that talks about the limitation of corrosive gases. There's also an ISO that we talk about, 14644. That's in relation to solid particles. You've got a European standard there, EN 1822, which talks about those particulars as well. There are a lot of standards that I talk about. We talk about preventative measures, especially during construction. During your construction stage, your implementation stage, there are also liquids which can create issues for us in a data center, like water leakage, but also unfiltered fresh air intakes, which will introduce salt fog or even polluted air supply. So it's something that we spend a lot of time talking about. Module 11 being efficiency, data center efficiencies. We talk about the importance of sustainability, how to measure efficiency, the potential issues with PUE, and the various options to save power in the data center. In CDCS, again, we do a deep dive into these standards. You may want to decide which one to use. It will always start with your site selection, part of your design phase, your site selection. The location of your data center is going to be influenced firstly by your local regulations and then your national frameworks. However, you might want to do more than your AHJ requirements. AHJs are your authority having jurisdiction. Often data centers introduce various redundancy measures to ensure high availability, but adding additional redundancy often has a negative impact on your energy efficiency. Remember, UPS systems use energy. Data centers must be carefully designed, and decisions need to be made to have a balanced redundancy and also energy efficiency. We talk in detail about another ISO 30134. That's starting to become the dominant standard within our industry. We also touch on a Singapore standard. If anyone's from Singapore, we talk about the 564 standard. It's more locally applied there. We've also got the LEED, which is the Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. And there's also the Green Building Certification Program, which was developed by the US Green Building Council. So going back to your ISOs 30134, that covers PUE, water usage effectiveness, energy reuse factor. You might know that as the REF, the renewable energy factor. So we talk about this in this module. And we go into some detail in regards to PUE. So in CDCS, we talk about PUE, and then we do a deep dive onto the 3 different types of categories that you might want to use. Some of these might be might interest you. You know, being a Cat 1, a Category 1, we're looking at a PUE 1. That's your basic resolution right there, and going to an intermediate resolution, then going into an advanced resolution, a PUE 3, when you're going all the way down to a rack level. You might not be looking at the in-rack cooling systems as an example, but we also talk about mixed source environments. So where you're using mixed energy sources, so then you can apply a different weighting factor in that PUE calculation. And we go through these calculations in a lot of detail in CDCS. So it's something that you can take back to your organization and then reapply the correct PUE outcomes. And that's the end of my slide deck. Dean, back to you.
Thanks for that, Andre. That was fantastic. I think right. I think just to provide some additional context again, we did touch on it briefly, but I wanted to make sure that everyone on the call today Understood exactly where this fits in and how you benefit from it. It's one thing to look at what the course offers, you personally, and to say, okay, well, look, I would obviously learn a lot by going through this, but how does it benefit you career-wise? How does it also benefit those around you? So people in your team, perhaps teams of people that you're managing too. So when we look at the EPI framework overall, we have got a foundational certification, which we're not going to touch on today. We'll jump straight into design build. Now, the CDCP, as was mentioned, is a prerequisite for you to take the CDCS. And as I said earlier, that provides you with a strong technical foundation, a good understanding of the data center ecosystem. Everyone talks the same language. We're not going to teach an engineer how to be an engineer, but we're going to teach an engineer why we build data centers a specific way. The CDCS, though, as you can see from what Andre touched on briefly today, really expands on that. And you start to look at technical specifications in far more detail. And what does that mean for you day to day? Well, look, from an engineering perspective, or if you're in the engineering department, so to speak, obviously it's always good to have a far more detailed understanding of the data center as a whole. But this is where things can start to cost companies money when you make mistakes. And a lot of that comes down to poor specification. It could be capital costs that are higher than they needed to be because you've incorrectly specified equipment. It could be long-term operational costs because you've chosen the wrong equipment that costs you more to maintain long-term. There's all sorts of decisions that go into buying equipment, deciding what equipment to deploy, which vendors to select, and so forth. Because often when you invest in this infrastructure, you're stuck with it for a long time. And that's why this is such a valuable certification, because not only is it going to provide you with that detailed technical understanding on, data center equipment and infrastructure and how you specify things, but it will make you a good sparring partner for vendors, helping to put together RFQs, being able to provide oversight on what, your employees or your reports might be providing to you, and so forth. Beyond that, we've also got the CDCE. Now, that's a 5-day course that builds on top of the CDCS. So if we're looking at detailed technical specifications with the CDCS, what the CDCE starts to look at is the entire project life cycle. So everything from start to finish and what's involved in that. So we gradually build up in complexity. And the beauty of this approach is that it allows you to provide training to your staff based on their current level of experience and what they actually require. So someone who's a junior, the junior from a technical perspective, or perhaps has got more of a commercial role, they might benefit from a CDCP for a while and they don't quite need the more advanced certifications. But as they gain a bit more experience within their industry or their field, or they want to develop their own knowledge, you gradually move them up. We also have the CNCDP, which is the Network Cabling Design Professional Certification. That's a 2-day course and focuses heavily around cable design elements. As you'd expect with most data centers these days, interconnection is pivotal. And it's one of the reasons why that particular course has become so popular, because we tend to focus on cabling design within the data center environment specifically. The next courses that we offer are the operations courses. These are 3-day courses. That's the CDFOS, which is the Facilities Operations Specialist. That course is aimed at people who are on the tools. So think of the guys that are having to maintain the equipment, they work in the NOC and so forth. The CDFOM, which is the Facilities Operation Manager, is also a 3-day course, but that's aimed more at the management layer. So people who are responsible for driving policies, procedures, and so forth. So the FOS is focused on execution. The FOM is focused on actually putting the plan together. The CDCS is a 2-day course, and that focuses on environmental sustainability. The real push and drive for that particular course is that environmental reporting is becoming increasingly difficult for a lot of large data center operators. Regulators are getting more involved, ESG funding requirements. So what we look at with the CDSS is how do you operate a sustainable data center day to day? So we look at everything from, making sure you're efficient with power to waste management and all the reporting that's involved with that too, because a lot of it with regards to environmentals is actually just reporting. We've also got some risk-based courses. There's the risk-based professional. That's a fantastic course for those of you who are needing to manage the expansion of data centers or decommissioning, recommissioning projects, because it really helps you analyze and determine risk overall. The other course, which is really handy, is the CDMS, which is the Migration Specialist. If you're working in a data center where you're having to receive client equipment or help rack and stack, assist with network design and so forth, utterly invaluable. So a 2-day course that is really, really valuable, particularly to operations teams or those of you who are having to manage your service level agreements. We also have some compliance courses. Look, EPI is the largest TI 942 auditor in the world. We're the biggest data center certification body in the world. And we also provide training for the TI 942 standard in particular, again, to various degrees of complexity. Now, the CDCP is an entry-level requirement to attend the CTDC, which is the TI 942 Design Consultant. That's a 3-day course, and we go heavily into what the TI 942 standard is with that respective course. Extremely valuable for particularly those in the design consulting space, or those that are looking to adopt the TI 942 standard, which is many of our clients, because it gives you a detailed technical fundamental understanding of that particular, of the standard itself. And then we progress to internal and external lead auditors for those who are looking to conduct TI assessments internally for surveillance and recertification audits, for example. And then lead auditor, you'd actually be able to conduct external audits of facilities and provide them with an indication of whether or not they'd be able to achieve certification. So a little bit about accreditation and examination. EPI doesn't provide the certification directly. We're not printing the certificate in a kitchen. It actually is provided through an independent accreditation company called Exyn. Exyn is a global company that we've been working with for years now, but they are global. They work with a lot of well-known companies like Microsoft and HP too. They're completely independent though. So the examination process, the certifications that are provided to all our students who pass are actually provided by Exyn. So they retain all your records and information, and no matter where you go, that certification sits with them. They also operate under an ISO accreditation scheme, which is incredibly important too. And look, they focus on ICT and the data center industry, and there's millions now that they've certified. So it's a fantastic organization that I think adds a lot of credibility to the process that we follow, because it means that, you know, the exams in particular are not just being put together by EPI with no oversight. It's actually gone through a process. And this is one of the reasons why EPI's training is so highly regarded globally, to the point where often our certifications are a prerequisite for employment. Companies who wish to bid on projects need to have a certain number of certified staff on payroll and so forth. The courses are delivered in multiple formats, but they all come with the same bundle, which is we deliver the training, and I'll explain the formats in a sec, but also with an ebook, which is the textbook, and then the exam for Exyn when you're ready to take it. We provide the courses in multiple languages. You can see the languages on the screen right now, so all the major languages. We're continuing to add to this. We've added Thai and Bahasa as in delivery, not for all formats and some, but we're continuing to build and develop and deliver in more languages. There's 3 main delivery options for all of our courses. There's the ILT, which is instructor-led training. That is traditional classroom-based training. We also do virtual instructor-led training. That's classroom-based training, but delivered virtually. So over a video call like the one we're all on today. And then there's the TOD, which is our training on demand. That's accessed through the EPI Academy platform, where you'll be given 12 months access to the platform. And then you can go through the material at your own pace. There's no need to, you know, sit to a rigid structure. This is great, particularly for operations courses where it's difficult to get away. If you've got a large team and you can't pull everyone off site, the TOD is exceptionally good. This is available for almost all our courses, except the most advanced courses, that being the CDCE and some of the compliance courses. And the reason for that is that those courses tend to be, like I said, quite technically involved. We're reviewing design documentation, that sort of thing. It's difficult to deliver these as TODs. However, the rest of our courses are available under this format, and it's a great option for those who are really tight on time. So why would you choose EPI? Look, we are the first and the largest. We've been around for a long time now, as I said, almost 40 years, but we are the largest training company in the world now, and we also were the first. So a lot of experience in-house. We've been doing this for a while, and we've built a solid reputation over the last 30 plus years. But we are also a data center expert. So as I mentioned earlier, you know, a lot of the people at EPI all come with a strong data center background, but we're actively involved in the data center industry just today. not people that learn something and then disappear to a classroom. A lot of us are, on the front lines, auditing data centers, consistently providing consultation of different sorts to different organizations. And this is to the biggest companies in the world. So it could be the largest co-location companies, the biggest banks. We're providing services to all of them, which means that all of our trainers are constantly exposed to what's happening across enterprise markets, hyperscale, and now AI too. And that flows through to the courses that we develop and the material that we provide to our clients. We're also vendor neutral, and this is incredibly important because what that means is that what we're providing you with is a best practice understanding of data centers as a whole, be it design, be it operations, be it compliance, be it risk. And that's crucial because a lot of the training that's available out these days tends to sway towards particular products or solutions or vendor solutions. And that isn't necessarily the best approach for people who are looking for comprehensive training. We also have independent accreditation. Again, we touched on it earlier with Exxon, but this is important to emphasize because it's this independent accreditation, which is the reason why these certifications are so highly valued in so many countries today. Our development methodology also mirrors what is typical of traditional institutions and universities and so forth. We follow a similar process with regards to how we develop our materials. But the big thing too is that everything is focused on best practice standards. Now, while we might lean towards certain standards more than others, we do tend to favor the TI 942 standard internally. We don't just focus on the TIA standard. We look at ISO standards, BICSI standards, EN 5600 across the board. And this is important because all of these standards have a huge impact on, the facilities you need to design and construct and operate. And what we're not trying to do is teach you how to do your job as a specialist. As I said earlier, we're not going to teach an engineer how to be an engineer, but we're going to teach you how, or we teach you the why, I should say. We focus on the why we do things a certain way. We get a little bit more practical with the operations training, but even that again is based on best practice standards. And the importance of that means that in particularly with today's environment where people come and go quite a lot, it makes it easier to replace people that need to be brought in or hire people from outside the industry. When you bring them in and you put them through EPI's training, you know that at the very least they have a good, firm understanding of what best practice standards actually are. And then lastly, it's our track record. It's now 38 years. We've been around for a while. We're still going to be around for a while yet. And we're committed to maintaining our position in the market too. So I think EPI continues to grow. We're growing as the industry is growing. But I think a lot of that success has come off the back of, us delivering what has been a solid offering over the last few decades. So with that, I think we can jump into the Q&A. So I'll stop sharing the presentation here. We had a bunch of questions that were coming through. So let's just go through the questions and I did note some of the questions were asking about the presentation. It will be provided to everyone. We circulate it afterwards, and also the video access will be provided. So you're welcome to share it with your colleagues or anyone you like. The first question was from Mossad. He wanted to know what the difference was between the CDCS and the DCDC from BICSI. Are you familiar with it? I am. You can go for it though if it's something you're familiar with.
No, I'll flick that to you. Yeah.
Okay. I think the main difference between them is that the DCDC from BICSI, it's very much aimed at consultants. It's important to understand the EPI data center training framework and the way it's been put together the way it has. As I mentioned earlier, what we look to do is we look to develop people's skill set based on their expertise rather than just throwing them in the deep end from day one. So what you'll find is that the CDCP, for example, is a great technical foundation that anyone in operations, design engineering, testing and commissioning, but even sales would benefit from. They'd benefit immensely from it. And then from there, we gradually start to increase the complexity of the courses and the material that we provide. So someone who's a salesperson is going to benefit from a CDCP, but someone who's a salesperson is not going to benefit from a CDCS. It's complete overkill for what they may need. Now, if they're in pre-sales and they're having to specify equipment because they work at a vendor, then it's a different story. Then they start to benefit from it. So I think what you find is not just with DCD or the DCDC from Bixby, but some of the other providers who have got technical training, they don't necessarily frame and structure their training along the progressive path the way EPI does. And that makes it incredibly difficult for people to gradually attend the courses that probably suit their skill set more effectively. At the same time, too, the DCDC is actually aimed, as I said, more at consultants, so people who are looking to be involved in the consulting space. The CDCS is going to be invaluable for people in operations, in compliance. If you are, as I said earlier, a pre-sales person, so it's not just, engineering. While we're looking at engineering, because we're focusing so much on best practice standards and the best way approaches to these things, it becomes something that's aimed at a far larger audience and a lot more people will benefit from it. We had a question here from Sandeep. He wanted to know what's the basic difference between CDFOS and CDFOM. I touched on that. CDFOS, think of it as the people who are on the tools. CDFOM, think of it as the guys at the top who are telling the guys on the tools what to do every day. So one's focused on policies and procedures, and then you've got the CDFOS, the guys who are on the work floor, on the floor, actually doing the real work. So that's how it goes. We've got Paul asking, when is the next CDCS course? We have our schedule published on our website, but also feel free to contact us and we'll put you in touch with a salesperson who's in your region. We run publicly scheduled classes globally every week. The CDCS runs quite consistently. We also have a lot of in-classroom, or what we call ILT sessions that are planned. So yeah, just reach out to us and we can give you an accurate answer there. Razim wanted to know, he's finished CDCP. If he took the CDPS after 2 years, will it renew? Yes, if you've got your CDCP and then you complete your CDCS, you don't have to recertify CDCP. You can just recertify your CDCS and then it's valid. Same goes with CDCE. If you are CDCE certified, you don't need to recertify CDCP and CDCS. You just complete your CDCE recertification and you're good to go. The reason for recertification is, again, you saw with the sneak peek today, because technology is constantly improving, the materials updated, and to keep everyone current and relevant, we have to update the course and make sure people are staying current too. You can imagine with all these new approaches to designing data centers with artificial intelligence and hyperscale, data centers in 5 years' time is going to look a little different to the way they did 5 years ago. So it's important to stay current with what's happening, and that's difficult if you're not staying up to date with your training. Is the CDCS available on TOD? Yes, it is. You can contact us. It's also available off the website. Here's one, contaminations. Okay, this is quite a technical one. So this is definitely going to need you. I'm I'm very happy.
I'm always
CDCS.
talking on mute. I'm always talking on mute. I think CDCS is where we spend a lot of time on contamination, right?
Yep.
There's an entire module for that, and a lot of good value comes out of that. When I first experienced for myself as a student of EPI CDCS, it really opened my eyes onto how to actually apply the controls. So if you have the opportunity of doing CDCS, then taking that back into your floor management and into your operations, that really adds a lot of value to your organization.
Thanks for that. The next one was, can you provide some background on the CDCS? I'd like to check whether the drop systems and free cooling concepts are included in the CDCS training.
Yeah, so we talk about dynamic UPSs. We talk about all different types of cooling technologies, free cooling, chilled water, mechanical cooling, DX systems, immersion cooling, the works.
Great. We had a
I
question.
hope that answers your question.
No, I think it does. Someone wanted to know if they have any questions from the CDCS TOD, can they contact our trainers? You can. So at any stage, if you're going through the TOD material and you have any questions, just let us know and we'll put you in touch with one of our trainers. No problem there. Wanted to know data center cleaning. You covered on that quite a bit already. You said there's no service or specialized company available in this country. Best reference is ISO 14644 or 14643. Would love
Yeah.
to take any in-depth courses in this available in future. So what could you go through with regards to DC cleaning?
May I ask which country or region?
Yeah, it doesn't say.
Doesn't say.
No.
Again, CDCS. I'd be concentrating on the contamination controls and that module. And because we go into a lot of depth with your environmental specifications and then how to control the environment within your data center.
Cool. We got a question from Pravini. Wanted to know if there's any promotions on the TOD modules. There will be. There generally are around sneak peeks. That hasn't been finalized yet. Just drop us an email and we'll let you know when those are coming. He also wanted to know which is better for him, the ITIL or the TOD. It's a matter of preference. Some people prefer to sit in a classroom. Others prefer the ability to go through the material at their own pace in their own time. The TOD always does tend to be a little cheaper, so a bit easier on the pocket. But it really just comes down to what suits you personally. It's really a personal choice. We have got a lot of ILTs that are running. Again, best to contact us and see which classes are available based on where you live. Anything related to PUE optimization added to the CDCS, I'm just going to say plenty, tons. You covered a lot of that already. So yeah, we in detail.
Yeah, heaps.
Yeah, in detail. Another question from Zohab. Does anyone know closed loop water systems that are being implemented with like the Stargate project? Only one-time water requirement is raised, and closed loop systems reduce water loss as will cooling towers. Please advise. I think that's not really
That's
clear as a
technical
question to
advice.
us.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
that's a
think if you could
technical
maybe
advice.
email us, we'd be happy to help with that one. Do you have anything for liquid cooling specialists or some course which is more into liquid cooling? I think let me answer that one. This is a common question that we get. I think the issue with liquid cooling at the moment is that remember our training is based on best practice standards. There are no real widely adopted standards with regards to some of the newer technologies that are emerging, particularly with immersive cooling, on-chip cooling. That will change. And as the standards evolve and adapt to some of these newer technologies, then we start to implement more of that training. We do cover it in depth, though. This is stuff that we will certainly be covering with the CDCS and the CDCE. But just know that if there's anyone out there offering detailed, high-level training on this stuff, it's still so new, and even the vendors haven't figured out exactly what they're going to do just yet. So we're at the very early stages of containment cooling, how it was 15 years ago. That's where we are with liquid cooling, and things will evolve quickly. It's why, again, it's so important to recertify and why we update our materials so often. Because obviously as technology improves, we need to stay current, and liquid cooling will be one of those things that drives it more and more. However, I will say anyone who's looking at this, and we get this as a common question, you are going to get a lot of value from the CDCS, particularly around this subject matter, not just in understanding liquid cooling specifically, but in the ecosystem overall with regards to cooling. I think people sometimes get a little bit too caught up in certain aspects of design. It's important to be looking at design holistically too, because it all has an equally important role to play. Will HVAC cooling capacity design be discussed? Yes, in detail, huge amounts of detail. What's the difference between tier 3 and 4? In short, tier 3 is effectively concurrently maintainable, which means that you can maintain infrastructure while the equipment's live. The other is fault tolerant, which is very, very expensive to build, but again, covered in depth in the CDCS itself.
Dean, can I
You
ask?
can jump in there, please do.
I just wanted to ask that question regarding tier 3 and tier 4. Is that an Uptime Institute question? Because
Yeah, pretty much. Well, we prefer to use rated, right? Jump in,
yeah,
Andre, yeah,
yeah,
explain the
yeah. Sorry,
difference.
I got confused
Mm.
with that. Sorry. Yeah.
Mm.
Anyway, continue. Sorry.
Is it mandatory to have CDCP before CDCS? Yes, it is. Right, what else have we got here? I think we'll answer one more. So we're getting a lot of questions about recertification. If your CDCP is expired before 6 months before, well, you've got 3 years. It's a 3-year recertification or 3-year validity on your certification. You've got up to 6 months after it's expired to renew. After that, you do need to retake the course. I think that's it. Can I get? So this gentleman's recently completed a substation project. Can you
Oh
get
yeah. Okay.
calculation, an understanding of calculations in the CDS on short circuit studies and setting protection relay values? or
No,
SCE about software?
no, we
Hmm.
don't do that. But what we do is through the advanced power module, we talk about identification of all of the electrical components within the data center and how they all interact with each other. Specific calculations, you'd be looking at CDCE, but that's more of a technical question.
Yep. Well, look, thanks for that, Andre. I really appreciate you running everyone through it today. And thank you to everyone who joined too. We had a great attendance for this. I really appreciate everyone turning up and taking so much time out of your day to join us for this. I hope you got a lot from it. Again, at any stage, if you've got any more questions about the course or the material, class schedules, recertifications, please feel free to reach out to us at any time. We've got a large team, and as you saw, we are active globally. So people who'll be, if not in your country, in the same time zone or pretty close to wherever you may live. So happy to help at any stage.
Cool.
So I almost forgot about the lucky draw, didn't I?
Yes.
It's completely random on all the attendees. I saw the name that came up was, I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, David Takwayek, is the name that came up your page. David, yeah, Takwayek. So I've made a note to save it. We've got his contact details here. David, if you're still online, congratulations. You got it?
Congrats.
Good stuff. Very good. Well, thanks for that, Paige, and thanks to everyone too. Yeah, we look forward to seeing you all at the next one.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for
Thanks, guys.
Bye, everyone.